6 years ago, we conducted a strategic planning meeting with the board, and we just did another one 2 days ago, which Mark flew over from Scotland to facilitate, having read all of those responses and digested them into 6 themes. And you're going to tell us what those themes are and give some inkling of where the board is moving given those themes. And I'll sit by, and then we'll go from there, if necessary.
Yeah, okay. You can sit closer if you want to.
Why not?
Okay. Well, this is a fantastic conference, and I'm really privileged to be here. And it's been a privilege also to have been working over the last, 5 months now, something like that, with the board, sort of inching towards a view of what the future might look like. And every day that I've been involved with this, something new and exciting has come out. This panel discussion in itself has added yet more layers to possibilities of what might happen. And folks, that's just the US talking. I'm from the UK, and Scotland still is in the UK. Yeah. And that's absolutely, thank you. If you'd actually just cast your minds a little further, and you start thinking not just about the numbers, but the policy and all the rest, look at the scale of the need worldwide and what SMART can and could and actually must do to actually engage with that need. 20 years is a fantastic time to take stock of things, and the 20-year process has actually allowed a sort of an opening up for what the next 20 might look like. And that's an almost impossible thing to think about. But that's what strategy is about. And that's sort of what I do as part of my living, is to work with people who don't really know what the future looks like. And I have to be honest, the first time I came into contact with SMART, it took me a while to get my head around it, because it seemed to be all sorts of different things. It was clearly a program, but it was also an extremely vibrant community. It was a movement. It had all the components of all sorts of different things. So trying to get your head around what actually the board, what's this tiger that the board's got by the tail? It's a fantastic thing. It's owned, as I think the discussion was saying, it's owned by so many people. It's alive in so many communities already. It's got the potential to be alive in so many more. So how do you plan that? How do you engage with that? And so taking a leaf out of the recovery process, in a sense, you ask and you talk and you engage. And so in that context, having done all the things that people like me do around planning and so on, you come back to some fundamental questions that you want to ask. And that's really what the questionnaire was about. And the 861 folk who replied in what was about 2.5 weeks, I think if we'd kept it open for longer, it would have been too big. It would have been too big a response. But it gave us a huge response, lots of material, all free questions, open questions for people to comment. And in a sense, that's a rich database we've only just started to engage with. But there are some positives that leapt out, and these are not going to be things that are surprising to you. And then there's some themes about what SMART might want to focus on, or the board might need to focus on, the leadership might need to focus on. But let's get some of the positives there first. Let's start with the positive things. I mean, one of the obvious but must never be forgotten things is about the impact that the program has. The simple fact that this works, and it works for so many people. That impact is something which might need to be brought out a bit more, might need to be thought about a bit more, but that program, the impact, let's make sure that that's one of the first things that's not forgotten. And the philosophy that stands behind it, the non-judgmental, let's repeat that as well, the science-based approach. That was something that kept coming up time and time again in what the respondents to the questionnaire said mattered to them and needed to see continue into the future. The peer support and the community you would actually expect to be there, and it was there in bucket loads. One of the things that kept coming up, and I asked some questions which had which allowed people to say negative things as well as positive, never about the peer support, never about the community and the importance, or about the practicality of the tools, the meetings, the actual sort of the tangible benefits that come from engaging with SMART. The online materials, the growth of the online, the chat, the whole presence, the virtual presence that's there, really welcomed and more being wanted from that. That's a hell of a challenge, as you can imagine, because if you become virtual or you become worldwide and you go online, you're actually entering into all sorts of different language issues, all sorts of different cultural issues, and getting that absolutely pitch perfect is going to be quite a challenge going forward, but one that's absolutely the key, or one of the keys to SMART in the next 10, 20 years. Now, the themes that came out also leapt quite strongly. I mean, you're people of strong views, you know, and that's great. It makes it easier. I mean, as you can imagine, a British-only survey would sort of have, well, actually, we don't really like to say very much, but the response even from the UK was very strong to this. I mean, you have to remember that SMART really is growing around the world hugely. You may see it, you may not see it. I've seen it very much, partly because I knew very little about SMART when I first started. As I've got into it more, it's clear to me the potential is enormous. So the 6 themes, and they aren't surprises, again, I don't think, really, to most people. The first one was that you were saying very strongly you wanted to see more of smart recovery out there, you know, to consolidate and grow, to reach more people, for more people to know about smart recovery and what it means and what it can do. And this is engaging in all sorts of ways, from the public health and the mental health and well-being sort of policy side of it to just the individual impact, the whole thing. Get out there more, press more, market more, whatever the words are that came through, and there were plenty of them. So first thing about consolidation and growth. There are dangers in growth. You can lose your heart, you can lose your soul, you can lose the ethos that got you through the first 20 years. One of the things that's reassured me working with the board is that the board absolutely understand that and will not let that happen. You know, it's built into the DNA of the people on the board that will not happen. But again, it's a huge challenge to make sure that doesn't get compromised going forward. The second theme was about developing a worldwide community of smart recovery, a genuine worldwide community. Not necessarily one, I have to say this, with a US accent, but one that actually looks even-handedly at the diversity of the different approaches, the different ways that people think around the world, and to make sure that the smart tools, the smart philosophy, the smart approach engages with that at that sort of level. Some of the sort of feel of what a worldwide community might look like, I'm sure there'll be many different views about that. And again, one of the challenges for the board will be to pick the path through. And actually, you have to have leadership to do that. It's not something that grows organically. Those choices will need to be made. And so there will need to be increasing trust and visibility from the internationally focused board to actually provide that sort of leadership that's needed. And that leads to this, follows on from the discussion about embracing diversity, more choice, the way in which, again, you don't compromise the philosophy, but you open up the possibilities to more and more people in more and more ways. You don't necessarily just hold on to what you've got. You look at all sorts of different ways of achieving the same thing, of promoting the same thing. The fourth theme came really around to just sharpening up the program. You know, if you ask people what they think about something, they'll always tell you it can improve. What I say was remarkable this time was that I think there was only one of the 861 respondents who took it upon themselves to say just how, I was going to use another word, how poor the program was. But I think they had other issues, judging from some of their other responses. So you know, yeah, I think they were not using words like sharpen up the program. But there were so many practical proposals positively in the spirit of SMART that came through that frankly I ran out of space capturing them all. You know, they're sort of, and they're all different. I mean, they weren't sort of, they're individual perspectives, but they were extremely positive and constructive. So there's a lot to think about there, and there's a lot for Shari and the team to particularly work through. But it's about almost modernizing, keeping up to date with the changing times, with the opportunities that are there, not just through social media and through those sort of things, but actually just from the examples, learning from the examples of other movements. I mean, there have been references to them before, people who've been successful before, trailblazers in other areas where there's learning, to learn from those and to use that to make sure the program's absolutely up to date and available wherever it can be. And to do that, you have to overhaul the website. Not just the US one, but it came loud and clear, all the websites, and to connect them. So some of the sort of challenge again will be to make sure that the local flavor of all the websites, which have grown up in response to and with people, doesn't get lost. But the benefits of having, if it's a worldwide movement, if it's a worldwide community, to have those connected in a way that makes sense, that's got to be up there as one of the strategic targets, some of the things that we've got to get right soon. And that's practical. It's about making sure, in a sense, that the websites are a vehicle for all things smart recovery, whether that's the advocacy, whether that's the tools, whether that's the training, but actually get that so that it's alive and available and out there to anyone that needs and wants it. And the sixth theme was actually about improving quality control. That again is something that you might not expect so much if people are really saying all these other positive things, but actually that was about the meetings themselves in some ways, and it was also about the facilitators in some ways. So these were messages about just making sure, are we sure that actually everything is landing as it should? And so get beyond the alternative to AA, and it's got to be better just for that, to something which says we've actually got the data, the information which says not only does this work, but we can prove that it does to anyone who needs to know. So those 6 themes, and this will be up on the website shortly, all of this material, was not the starting point for the discussion around the strategy with the board. That had been going on for some time, because you have to inch forward. I mean, some people think that strategy is something that you go away in a darkened room somewhere and you come up with a strap line and you've got it broken. That's not the way strategy works. You do have to actually arrive at some decisions, and they have to be owned decisions. And so really what the board have been doing up to now is getting to a point where they're thinking through what it is that are the things they really need to get right. And the questionnaire responses have been really helpful with that. But some of it is about the experience that the board members themselves have also gained from being in the position of trying to think it through, some for the full 20 years. Others from the perspective of starting, as it were, just with a smart meeting and then ending up on the board. So a whole range of different perspectives also sitting alongside. And also work that's been done to say, well, what is the future looking like? What are the opportunities? So we heard about the American opportunities. I can tell you that in each of the countries that you care to name, that's not just the English-speaking ones, but let's stick with the English-speaking ones at the moment, there is an enormous potential, huge potential. That doesn't mean to say you have to grab all of that potential, not if it's going to actually compromise what's so great about smart, but actually it seems like a pretty stupid thing not to get your head around it and see if it could be made to work.
So that leads to a question.
Go on.
And this will start like a sales pitch for your kind of work.
Oh, good.
The advantage of hiring a strategic planning consultant is that we go through this twice in 6 years, but you go through this dozens of times, maybe hundreds by now.
Yeah.
So you've seen many organizations at our level of development, others farther along, others before. Can you say something about this organization and its level of development, and just from that fact, the kinds of things that an organization at this level needs to be looking at?
Okay. Yes, I have worked with hundreds of organizations and with governments and with all sorts of people. wouldn't normally be associated with or admit that I've been working with. I think the issue for boards is to size themselves up for the task in front of them. The biggest thing is to be very self-aware and to know what it is that they need to have both within the board itself and available, and to know what professional skill looks like, to know what the non-executives need to bring to every discussion that the board has, and for that to be something that you do objectively. Because the thing with organizations when they grow organically is that it's very difficult to let go. It's very difficult to look around at people who've put their heart and soul into something and say, you know, I think we probably need some slightly different expertise. And it may be from areas we wouldn't previously have touched. So, for instance, if resourcing is going to be really important, we need some money to grow. You know, how do you do that? Well, part of that may actually lead you to look at having within the board or available to the board people who are really expert at that, who will give advice to the board. But the whole thing about boards for organizations like this is they have to look after the soul of the organization. They must never let that go. But they have to do it objectively. And so I think where SMART is and where the operating environment is for SMART requires that to be looked at in quite a hard way. To say, you know, are we big enough? Are we truly international? Can we make that step up? Can we reach the corners that need, or are we going to be a block? And that's very, very difficult to reflect on. Personally, I think that the board will need to transition. I think over a period of, let's say, a couple of years, it will need to reflect the fact that it will have to move, as it were, from being an just an encouragement to actually doing some planning of which countries, which territories, what sort of future it's going to make happen. And to do that, it will have to look internationally, it will have to bring on and take risks and know how to take risks. Now, it has taken risks in the past, but some of them have been things which the board themselves have been able to absorb and work through without an awful lot of distinction sometimes between what I would say is the non-executive role, the objective look, and the executive role, the doing part of it. And so that distinction, I think, will need to be much clearer. I think the board will need to be slightly bigger, it will have to have a slightly different range of skills in it, and it will have to have this international presence.
So let me point out something that you don't yet know, nor does most of the audience, which is that at yesterday's board meeting, we committed ourselves to establishing an international, truly international board by the end of October 2016, slightly more than 2 years from now. Mm-hmm. There was an opinion that it might actually be a 3-year task, but we will aim to accomplish it in 2 years, which would mean exactly how it looks we don't yet know, but a spin-off of a U.S. board, which will then also, like other nationalities, report to an international board. So that's
fantastic.
That's one of the specific decisions that came out of the meeting on Thursday. And I think you'll be happy to know that.
I really am. The things obviously move fast around here. We had this discussion on Thursday. On Friday, the decision's made. I mean, but that, in a sense, that's the environment that people are in now. That's where SMART is. I think that's a brave decision, and I think that's the right decision to make, because actually the policy presence, the technical expertise, not just the legal, but the marketing and all the other things that make things work will need to be there. And to give voice and to give weight to all of the communities around the world as they come on board, and to set things up so it can do that smoothly over the next few years is a genuinely strategic decision and a commitment. So I absolutely applaud you. I think that's tremendous.
Thank you. I just want to comment on the parallel between the need for board self-awareness with the need for self-awareness at the beginning of a recovery process. And since we have many in the board who identify themselves as being in recovery, and all of us who would like to increase our self-awareness will view those as parallel tasks.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that will give a genuine depth to the way that the board works. That self-awareness is very clear and clear both individuals who are currently in the board. But I think as you recruit new people, as you bring new people on, I think it's a hurdle that you must put in front of them, that they have that insight and that they will contribute to the sort of the growth of that ethos in a way that actually allows the business side, the organizational side of SMART to serve the greater needs, as opposed to dominate them or take them or distort them in a particular way. And I've seen that happen both good and bad in other organizations, and I've helped some out through that, and I've unfortunately had to let others go where they've actually gone the wrong route, and that there are right and wrongs in this. Okay. But I think in the right hands, and I think even that commitment to give a definite time period, but one that isn't stupidly aggressive, you know, which allows things to develop and for there to be stock taken along the way. I think that in itself is very encouraging. How you actually then move into what the agenda for that board is something, again, we spend a bit of time on. And I think there are. I mean, I think you're going to cover that a little bit more possibly tomorrow. But the advocacy discussion was a really interesting one that you just had. The extent to which you build that in to what the board wishes to do or what wishes to see as part of it. So it has to sit there alongside many other things. Okay. I think there are about normally 8 or 10 major tasks that need to be done. But the first is about getting the board right-sized. The second is around making sure that the program and the training, the integrity of the program and training, which is right at the heart of everything, is actually kept in sharp focus. Because the temptation is to drift away, to not do that. But the idea of making sure that the integrity, the quality issues are really addressed and held onto, because that will be the calling card in the end. That will be the thing that will be decisive, as opposed to other recovery programs one could mention. Okay. You know?
One last question. Absolutely. And then a closing comment from you. So you have here representatives of our worldwide community, and you have focused on what the board needs to do. Mm-hmm. How can the community support the organization and the board in this process of internationalizing and addressing these 6 issues? How can that support come up that ladder?
There are all sorts of ways. I think you as the board have to open that dialogue up and be open to that. There's a clear voice already around SMART. I think that within the people who've been touched positively by SMART, there will be people who will be very good advocates and are already advocating. But I take the line of, you know, if you've got a voice and you believe in this, say it and act and get out there. So it becomes a movement. It actually has that flavor of something which isn't being planned by a board. You know, it's going on out there. So I think it's not keeping your experiences to yourself, the positive experiences. But I think, in a sense, the SMART website, the way that works, could be a useful way of bringing some of that out a bit more and then promoting it more heavily. So I think there's a deal to be done here somewhere. But actually, there are different voices. There are local voices in local communities. There is the advocacy and policy development voice, which has to be thought through and planned a bit more. But there's also the very public voice. It's almost the Oprah Winfrey voice. You know, there's something about getting into the lifeblood of the public media more. And you can't really plan that, but you can have that voice coursing around the veins a bit, and it will find its way out. So it's an encouragement, really, to recognize the size that you are now and the size you're going to become. And that will really, the difference between success and not success, although I can't see how you're not going to be successful, frankly, will be the extent to which the issues that came up through the questionnaire, the positive things that people felt about SMART, are things they feel strongly enough about to share and actually promote to other people, one-on-one, and then further and further and further. And
come out.
Absolutely. Okay.
And any final comment?
Well, let me go back to where I started, really. I didn't know very much about SMART when I first came into contact with it was actually the UK where I first made contact and had contact. I think that SMART is quite extraordinary. I think that the not just in terms of what it could be, but what it is now. I think I have worked in areas of health. I've been a chief executive in the health system. I've been in government. I've run a university. I've done all sorts of things. But I don't think I've come across anything as powerful as hearing what actually SMART means to you and what it can mean and should mean to other people. And if I make a commitment, I would, in one way or another, love to continue to be part of whatever SMART is in the future in some way. Don't know what that will be, but I would like to actually see that come forward. So my final comment is, if you can convince a hard-nosed strategist like myself that this is passionate, important, vital stuff that needs to be known in the world, then you're on a winner.